Hey folks, Matthew Weiss here, WeissAdvice.com and Weiss Advice here on YouTube. So I put out a video last week talking about Waves. It was part of the Worth It series where I discuss whether or not I feel that a plugin company and their products are in fact worth it, or really whether or not I would recommend them and under what circumstances might be more accurate. So Gatai Barak from Waves saw the video and he hit me up and said, "Hey, Matt, I think that there might be some misinformation or some things that could require some context in order to get some of the things that you said right." And I said, I appreciate you reaching out. I would love to hear what you have to say. So I just got off the phone with him and I want to make this video while I have my ideas fresh. This is going to be a basic paraphrase of the conversation that we had. We also did a lot of shooting the shit, so not using the actual recorded conversation, but a couple of things that he wanted to address here. So first, I said that part of the Waves policy is that you put your licenses on a hard drive of some sort. If you go somewhere without that hard drive, you then get one recovery of your licenses to use it on a different system. And then after that, if you need to do that again, you're SOL. That is apparently incorrect. The actual policy is this. If you do something like what I did before I went overseas, where I left my licenses on my computer hard drive and then do the recovery, now that I've come back and I've reauthorized the licenses to the original computer where they were licensed before, that recovery has now refreshed. So if I do some dumbass stuff and I forget that I did that and I go somewhere else without my licenses again, I still get to be able to recover them, and then that also refreshes every year. Now, if that doesn't work for some reason, say you have them on a USB flash drive or something like that, and it gets stolen or lost or whatever, then you can still contact Waves tech support. It's not going to be as quick as just saying, click recover, but they're going to take a look at your file, look at your case, and assuming you can show that you are who you are, you're going to get your licenses back pretty quickly. So really important correction on that. Okay, next, I did mention that when you're installing the plugins, you install them all at once from Wave Central. There is a asterisk besides that, which is that you can install them piecemeal. The only limitation is that if you have legacy products that you've downloaded, you have to also download an older version of Wave Central to access the legacy ones. So it's a little bit cumbersome, but it's really, if you're really set on managing your plugin list, which I should be, but I did the lazy thing and just installed all of them, then, you can do that. You can micromanage it all and get it all in that way. It just takes a little bit more effort. Okay, so another thing that I mentioned was that I was afraid that one of my major apprehensions was because of the way that Waves rolled out the subscription plan, I was worried that the plugins might not be around in 5 years, which was a little bit of panic mode, I think, on my case, because I remember where that's coming from is the difficulty that I had getting my Waves to activate while I was overseas made me feel really uncomfortable. And I just joined the subscription thing just because it was more important that I get everything activated and moving forward than it was going over trying to figure out what went wrong and going back and forth with tech support and all that stuff. So I think that was a little bit reactionary on my part, a little bit hyperbolic. Waves is going to be around in 5 years. And Gatai pointed out something, there's not too many plugin companies that have been around for 30 years. I actually have a video on vintage plugins that still hold up. And one of them is the Waves Q10, which I believe is from the late 90s, if I'm not mistaken. That is a long time for a plugin to be around. So I think it's safe to say that if you get Waves, you are going to have your plugins in 5 years. Yes, apocalyptic scenario, any plugin company could theoretically fold, and then in a few updates, those plugins might not work anymore because the company doesn't exist. That's actually happened before, but I think Waves is one of the least likely for that to happen, which also brings up a sort of another point, and probably the main point of contention with Waves, and that is their upgrade plan. So I talked to Gatai about that pretty extensively. I really grilled him on it because I think that's the number one problem that people have with Waves. And while I still have certain reservations about it, Gatai, coming from the perspective of Waves, really did explain things in a way that actually does make a lot of sense. The reality is that plugins are never infinite. The illusion that you download something and own it, it doesn't really exist, because every time, unless you stay on exactly that system that it is designed for, that's the only way it really officially exists. So updating is a way of keeping things moving forward as you start upgrading to stronger computers and more optimized DAWs and things like that. It pays for the optimization along the way. So I hit him with the, like, if you're going to make versions for the newest operating systems, why not just give it to the people who purchased it for free? And he said, that cost is built in a lot of other systems. The reality is that when you're upgrading, the majority of the expense and upkeep of the company is spent on programmers who are making sure that there is a bridge between that original code and every single DAW on every single operating system that is out and available on the market, realistically speaking. And when you think about the permutations of numbers of different operating systems, plus all the DAWs on those operating systems, it is a lot. Now, I sort of mentioned that I understood that you have to somehow find a way to resolve the cost of doing that upkeep, and that other companies just seem to be doing it for free, so it's not so competitive. But he mentioned two things. One being that other companies are typically charging more than Waves, so it's a little bit more a la carte with Waves. You can purchase a plugin when it's on sale for like 30 to 50 bucks, and then you could choose to spend the additional 20 bucks or whatever it is on the upgrade service for that plugin, or you could spend 70 to 100, 150 bucks on another plugin, and while you might get the upgrades and update with it, you have in a way paid for it. And I think that is certainly true. Waves is also not the only company that charges for updates. iZotope, off the top of my head, every time they do an update, they give you a cross grade or an upgrade price, and then you can update. The other thing is that there is a really long line of Waves plugins. For the companies that are really new, it's a lot easier to incorporate the upgrading into the cost, because there might only be, even in a more extensive company, you might only see about 30 to 50 plugins, whereas with Waves, there's 300 plugins. And the reality is that money does need to come from somewhere. So I do kind of get that. I think that there's pros and cons to an opt-in system, and I do think that it's understandable why that turns people off. So, it's one of those things where, like, before I was kind of like, and now I'm more like, you know what I mean? So that's kind of where I'm at with it now. He also pointed out that there's other incentives attached to the update program, which is one, that you get phone support, which I don't believe any other plugin company offers. You usually do email support. I don't think there's any other companies that are specifically plugin companies where you can literally call them. And then they also include a second license with that. Now, I think the point here is to incentivize, for the company to keep going. Those costs have to get covered. Most companies are really covering their costs through subscription models. Now, I think what we all didn't like was the way that Waves rolled out the subscription model. And, I really looked at Gatai and was like, okay, but what's up with that? And he said flat out it was a mistake. And pretty much everybody in Waves agrees that it was a goof. And over the course of 30 years, it's really the only major mistake that Waves has really made. So basically, he said it was just a moment of being out of touch and a mistake. And I have to say, it's really hard to run a company for 30 years and not make mistakes. So was it cool? Definitely not. But, I think it's one of those things where they rolled it back in a couple of days. It showed really poor judgment on their part, but they did address it immediately. They listened. They didn't just say, well, this is what's better for our company, so forget what all the people complaining are saying. No, I mean, they really paid attention to it and were like, okay, let's roll this policy back. Let's make sure people can do for purchase downloads and also offer the subscription, and, keep in mind for the future that things like notifying major policy changes and things like that is very important. So I thought that was a really frank response, and I think it's okay. I think that to a certain degree, we need to allow people to make mistakes as long as they are able to fix the mistakes. So with all that being said, I want to recontextualize my ultimate conclusion on that previous video. And my ultimate conclusion then was, I want to recommend Waves, but I have apprehensions. And now that I've talked to Gatai, I think a lot of those apprehensions have been dissuaded. I think I understand the perspective of the update plan a little bit better. Yeah, there's still little things that are kind of a little fuzzy, but it's not so apocalyptic where I'm afraid to make a recommendation because I feel like you're not going to have your plugins. That was over the top. So I will say I do recommend Waves. I use Waves in my own work all the time. You've seen it in my videos in the past plenty of times, and I feel a little bit more comfortable about recommending it. I think, the two criticisms that hold up is one, going into the future, Waves needs to be more mindful about their communication with their customer base so that they're not doing things like, surprise, you can't purchase our plugins anymore. And also that I do wish some of the policies and things that you need to do to get your Wave system set up were a little bit more clearly outlined in Wave Central and on the website. I think those are my two justifiable criticisms that I'm going to hold on to for sure. But I think I can say that I recommend Waves. I think that if you get Waves plugins, you're going to be well off. All right. Thanks for tuning in, guys. If you like this video, hit that like button. If you want to catch more videos like this, hit subscribe with the bell notification so you get notified. And you know what we say here at Weiss Advice. We are musicians. Sound is our instrument. And I'll catch you next time.